put a question out here. You can use McLuhan to answer a lot of your questions. So apply McLuhan to these questions about why does rap persist. Okay, have you ever listened to Eskimo music or Cherokee music? La 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 la. McLuhan says that the media environments alter our sensory life. Apply that to rap. Okay, with television, McLuhan says that's a tactile medium. So tactile is not sight, it's not ear, it's not motion, it's not smell. It's the interplay of senses. So if you bring in a tactile environment like television into a culture that's rigid with print, newspapers, movies, and radio, really rigid. You just have to look at ancient movies, and you see how nobody knew how to talk other than stilted aristocratic speech by the elite. So if you bring in what McLuhan called the muddy wake of television, you have dumped the whole society into an oil drum, say, or what could be a swamp of tactual, audile and tactual sensory interplay. So all the arts and sciences are going to change. So what comes in first? Dirty black music, the rhythm and blues, the blues of Chicago. This stuff wasn't even allowed to be near white culture, right? So they found a couple of people, white guys, who could perform gritty, starting to move towards tactile, muddy sounds. And what's Elvis known for? He started swiveling his hips, and they wouldn't broadcast it. So if you look from black and white TV, color TV, then the mixture under the satellite of TV, radio, movies, and everything in a mishmash, which we call a tactile multimedia environment, it gets real muddy. So muddy that you get the Sex Pistols, who can't play nothing, but they just yell and scream. At the same time, you got shiny disco and the beginning of rap. If you look at, just take the phrase, the muddy wake of tactual or auto-tactile awareness, you're all thrown into you could say a Esalen sauna tub, hot tub. And you're all swimming around in this sensory mixture where you're constantly having to respond to other people by your phones, by more and more people sharing the same content in electric media. So that's called the muddy wake, and that happens in the 60s and 70s. So here you are, you arrive at the 80s, and there's no ground for visual hierarchy or acoustic hierarchy or kinetic hierarchy. All you'll get is a simulation of those sensory organs in institutions. So what takes over in the movement, kinetic? Sports racing, cars, and maybe football. What takes over in politics? A simulated replay of a small town known as Ronald Reagan. What takes over in music? It's decentralized, and it's not really, it becomes techno and virtual, or it becomes more hyper-disco, or it becomes more heavy metal or punk. It becomes non-musical in the literate sense of classical music, of the singing the Carpenters did. These were people that would sing melodies and harmonies with a literate training. So the literacy factor is going down. The eye and the ear are being diminished, are moving towards mud. So then by the late 80s, you get a bunch of kids who have nothing, and they take a fucking record player and scratch the record. How muddy is that? Can you get more muddy than just scratching a fucking record? At the same time, everybody is sharing the discarnate electrified state. They're all disembodied in the TV landscape, not the TV body yet. That comes with the digital. But they're in this incredible transported anywheres by TV, radio, and what else do they have? Walkmans and stuff. So in that mud, you have somebody comes out and they don't sing and they just start grunting words. And it's good to have a bit of rhyme because that's a retrieval of the acoustic simulation. You know, folk cultures, folk ballads. So if you see it getting muddier and muddier, and McLuhan's other principle, the audience gets more into the act. That means less talent gets more in the act because the image that the tribe looks at, and it's not an old-fashioned tribe, it's a fragmented tribe because they're starting to become digital and isolated, but they're also on a mass level holding up their cigarette lighters, you know, in a big auditorium and having that mass image. But as it gets more and more mass, that means everybody gets involved and can participate and can put out their own independent music. So it's nothing but audience participation of no talent in illiterate terms. And it can never progress as an art form, the rap and hip-hop, because it's all about participation by the people. It's the audience making stuff for itself. And they got to have the lowest common denominator of skill. So that is a good explanation of what happens to people's sensory lives when you bring in the muddy wake of television and then all the other media that mix in with TV. How you can, and we're talking about the effect on everybody, not a conspiracy by the black nobility to make everybody stupid, because they're not stupid. They're really good at participating and co-creating with whoever's pretending to be the leader on the stage. Because technically, software cannot be bought, sold, or stolen. As you move into the electronic software world, the hardware terms of money and markets disappears. And it's just endless people keeping their TV on all day, their radio on, and then later their computers, and just knowing what's happening, whatever part they're tuning into. It's the participation mystique is the term McLuhan used. It's joining into the global ESP and the sharing of the space. And it doesn't matter, McLuhan said, what the radio show is. It's the fact you're turning into that wilderness and you want to see what's going to happen. Like every day you show up and you look over the mountain, you look from the mountain down the valley to see what's going to happen in the valley. That's what people do when every morning they turn on CBC. They want to see what's happening. And something happens, then something else happens, then something else, and the programs change. But everybody keeps participating in the non-content space of a shared ESP sort of thing. So that started with the radio environment. If you start bringing in chemical body categories, then you get simple points of view and goes into the old class, gender, race war, which is not what's happening. Everybody participates in the global media environment, and they're all getting massaged into a tactile, muddy wake. So can you come up with a better theory than that of explaining the sensory preferences that media are causing in people?